Good morning. My name is Chef Adam Batchelder, and I am one of the culinary instructors here at Tri-County Regional Vocational Technical High School. Today, I'm going to talk to you about cooking methods, one of my favorite topics because it is a foundation, a fundamental of culinary arts. Let's jump right on into it.
By the end of this lesson, you will be able to list 3 ways to transfer heat. You will be able to list 3 different cooking methods. You will be able to list and define at least 5 different cooking techniques and which cooking method they follow.
So the first question we're going to ask you is, what is cooking? Quite simply put, cooking is the application of heat transferred to food. How long have humans been cooking? For a very long time, since early man first discovered fire. The first cookbook was written on a Mesopotamian clay tablet thousands of years ago. Cooking has been around for a long time. And as you'll see in the next slide, why do we cook food? So why do we cook food? Well, cooking food makes it more digestible. In other words, easier for you and your body to process that food and get the nutrients out of it that you need. Cooking food makes it safe to eat by killing the microorganisms. If you go to eat raw poultry right now, farm raised, it's filled with things like salmonella. Cooking food improves flavor, texture, and appearance. We cook food to make it taste better for us. Add seasoning. Now, in one of the previous slides, we asked, what is cooking? And we answered that with, it is the application of heat transferred to food. So how do we transfer heat to food? Well, we have 3 different ways. We have conduction, convection, and radiation. In the next few slides, I'm going to explain in a diver deep to each of them. What is conduction, convection, and radiation? All right, so let's talk about conduction. When you make direct contact with a heat source to the food, you have conduction. So something like taking a steak and putting it on a hot pan and searing it is an example of conduction. Throwing a hot steak on a grill and the steak touching the grill grates is an example of conduction. This is the process of heat moving from a hotter object to a cooler one. Cooking your food. Convection. Convection is the process of which the food is heated by a moving heat source, such as moving air or even boiling water. If I poach something in water, the movement around the item of food that I'm trying to cook is going to be cooked by convection. Or we have a convection oven behind me. There's a fan in the oven spinning, moving the hot air around the oven. That is an example of convection. Moving on to radiation. Radiation is the process where heat and light waves penetrate the food. So a microwave oven uses short, high-frequency waves to help excite the molecules, and that's what will cook the food from the inside. Another example is a broiler. So when you use a broiler, the infrared heat. So I gave an example of the grill before, where I put the steak on the grill. Well, the grill grates cooking the food is an example of conduction, but the heat source radiating from below the grill grates, that is an example of radiation. Makes your food crispy, except the microwave. I hate the microwave. Let's not use that. So we just got done talking about how we transfer heat. Now let's talk about the 3 types of cooking methods. We have dry, which is cooking with the absence of moisture. Wet heat cooking, which means we're using liquid or steam to cook food, or a combination, which is when we use both dry and wet. Let's start talking about cooking techniques now. We're going to start with the dry cooking method. So this is called frying. Now we have 2 ways we can fry. We can deep fat fry, or we can shallow fry. When we fry in these deep fat fryers, we're completely submerging the liquid in oil. It creates a shell around the food and cooks the food from inside with no moisture from around it. So even though you're submerged in oil, which is a liquid, you're actually doing a dry cooking method. Another type of fat frying is shallow frying, where we use a pan, fill it maybe a halfway, quarter way, three-quarter of the way with an oil, and we fry one side of the food. Typically, we only flip it once and fry the other side of the food. Great way to do fried chicken down south. All right, on to another dry cooking method. We're going to use grilling. So grilling, we're going to take this item right here. This is called a char grill. It's got grates, and the heat comes from beneath the grate. Heats these grates up, and we can put our food directly onto it. This uses high heat. That means we can cook food fast on it. It's going to cook the outside. It's going to put a sear. It can make it a nice crust. Perfect for grilled chicken, steak. We can even do heartier fishes like salmon because it's got the firmness and won't fall apart on it. So items that can withstand high heat, you want to cook on a grill. Get that nice caramelization. A great dry cooking method is roasting. When we roast food in an oven, we're using a hot and dry oven. No moisture in there. That way we can get a nice caramelization on the outside of our food that's been cooking for a nice slow time. Sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 hours. It's like waking up early, putting in your roast turkey for Thanksgiving. This method is ideal for larger, heartier foods like whole poultry, root vegetables, or big cuts of meat, which will become tender. They'll develop their flavors in the oven while they're cooking. Like roasting, baking is another dry cooking method. This dry heat is often transferred by convection and relies on chemical and physical changes within the food, such as the gelatinization of starches and browning reactions like caramelization. That's how you get that deep, dark, crusty bread on the outside of a beautiful baguette or a nice, crusty Italian or French bread. You can also get really delicate pastries and soft, fluffy cakes while baking. Now we're moving on to a wet cooking method, boiling. When we cook food in boiling liquids, such as stock, milk, or water, boiling liquid is moved around rapidly. Okay? From the excitement of the water molecules. Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit at sea level. So we boil things that can handle heavy, rapid movement, such as a quick vegetable. We could boil peas in that hot water, and then we might pull them out, throw them into some ice water, and shock them cold, so it stops the cooking process. Boiling is fast and hot. Again, it's a wet cooking method. Let's talk about simmering. Simmering is like boiling, but we're not going to bring the water temperature as hot. We want to bring the water temperature about 185 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit. When we simmer, we're going to cook foods that can't quite handle the temperature of a boil, where they'll be ripped apart. This is a more gentle cooking method than boiling. All right, we have another wet cooking method. And like boiling and simmering, this method uses liquid where we're completely submerging the food in it again. We can poach things like eggs in here for Eggs Benedict. We can poach fish. So this method is for foods that are very fragile and will break up with simmering or boiling cooking method. We want to keep the temperature of this method around 150 to 185 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, let's talk steaming. Steaming is a wet cooking method. Steaming is cooking food with liquid that has been heated to the point of evaporation. The difference of steaming food and for boiling or poaching the food is that it's not completely submerged in liquid, but it's still surrounded by the evaporated liquid. So it's a wet cooking method. Behind me, we have our combi oven, and I have the steamer going. When I open it, you can see how much steam actually dumped in there. A lot of steam in there. It's a great way to maintain the nutrient value of fresh vegetables. Braising food. This is our first combination method that we're going to talk about. Now remember, a combination method means that we're using both wet and dry. Braising food involves searing the food at a high temperature, which is dry, and then cooking it covered 3/4 of the way with liquid, which is wet, at a low temperature for a long period of time. This is great if you want to make a nice braised brisket. It's going to help break down muscle fiber and connective tissue, so this is a very low and slow cooking method. Stewing is another combination cooking method. Stewing is like braising, as it involves searing the food at a high temperature and then simmering it covered with liquid at a low temperature for a long period of time. The difference between stewing and braising is stewing is going to take place on top of the stovetop, where braising we finish it off in the oven. Sous vide cooking is a combination cooking method, and it's one of my personal favorites because it involves science. I love science, and especially the science of food. Sous vide is when we vacuum seal the food and then we submerge it inside a water circulated bath. We use one of these kinds of machines, like a water circulator. These water circulators will move the water around at a very consistent temperature, and we can cook the food exactly to that temperature. I absolutely love sous vide. One of the neatest things I've ever seen in the food industry, and it can cook a ton of different things. The way it becomes a dry cooking method and a combination wet cooking method is once it's in the vacuum sealed bag, sometimes we put a liquid in there, sometimes we don't, but when we finish it, we take it out of the vacuum sealed bag and we do what's called a reverse sear. We might hit it on a cast iron stove, might finish it in the oven at a very high temperature, or we might even use a blowtorch to it. It's a lot of fun.
Can you list and give an example of 3 ways we transfer heat to food? Can you explain why you personally cook food? What is your favorite food and what cooking method do you think that is? Can you list and describe at least 2 dry, wet, and combination methods? Answer the questions and send back to me with complete sentences. Do your best to answer each question to the best of your ability.